Good morning and welcome to Through It All with the Moffats. I'm back again today to make some cake pops with you. I've had a lot of people say that they really enjoy my cake pops. They're better than another coffee store. I won't say their name. So I'm honored by that, and they want to know how to make them. So it's not as easy as it looks, but I'm going to try and give you as many tips as I possibly can. So the first thing you need to do is you need to bake a cake. You can just, I used to do it by scratch. Now, with my body and the way it is, I just use boxes, and that's completely fine as well. And I also used to make my own buttercream, and actually I still do make my own buttercream, but for time's sake, I have also used the store-bought stuff, such as the Co-op Gold vanilla frosting. It actually doesn't even have milk in it. So if you're worried about that, this is a good brand to do. This is the only vanilla one that I've actually found that is dairy-free. Betty Crocker, the creamy deluxe one, is also fine. The thing you want to remember is that it cannot be a runny icing. If you use a runny icing, your cake pops will not work. They won't hold, they won't form. So go ahead and bake your cake. Then you want to completely cool it. I don't use a cake pop mold. Those suck. Those aren't real. You're not going to get the result you want. So run from those. We're going to get our hands dirty today, and that's okay. That's why we have sinks and soap. And anyways, I digress. Cool your cakes completely. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to break it up. No big clumps, and just literally just break it up into a bowl. For one box, you're gonna need less than half of this. And I always recommend to start with less, because once you have too much icing in your cake mix, you're out of luck, so to speak. So just go ahead. I'm gonna say that's maybe about a quarter, probably about a quarter of a cup too. And then just start to smoosh it in. That's the technical term, smoosh. And it'll start to stick together more, and that's fine. I know why break it up if you're just gonna put it back together. There is a method. You have to break it up and you have to make it fine so that it all binds together, and then it makes it more like a Play-Doh. I know, why didn't I grab 2 spoons in the beginning? Good question. I thought I had everything together. Okay, so this brings us to almost half. Put that one in there now. So clearly I had my cake basically all broken up already, because I actually had broken it, and I ended up just putting the whole thing into the freezer. When I had my cake business, I used to save all my tops of my cakes. That's what I made them from. When you level off your cakes, you end up throwing away, and I was like, I've got to be able to use this somehow. Why waste? Why throw away money? And good cake, right? Okay, so it's now starting to stick together, but the reality is it's not. But don't keep adding icing, not quite yet. Now we pull up our sleeves. You can use food grade gloves if you're worried about getting your hands dirty or cross-contamination. I'm not gonna worry about that right now. So then you're gonna start. See, and as you can see that there's still lots. This cake is very moist. If you find that your cake, after making it, is too moist, you can actually just, after you've crumbled it, just leave it for a little bit, because you do want to kind of have it dry. You can do that at this stage too. Dry out that cake a little bit. Chocolate's a little bit more fussy like that. Lots of moisture. What ends up happening if you add too much icing, it doesn't hold, and then it starts to ooze through your chocolate. It'll break your chocolate and it'll just fall off. So you don't want to do that. So yeah, that was actually less than half of a jar for a full cake box. So now you see, and I probably actually could have used a little bit less because I did not let my cake dry out a little bit. So now we have, it's very moist, which is fine. So you're not going to see the icing, but it's going to be in there, and you do taste it. So now you can either just eyeball it, and just kind of roll it and see if it makes a perfect ball. If it cracks, which sometimes it will, then you can add just a smidge more icing to your cake and then go from there. Always add just a little bit at a time, because again, unless you want to make another batch of cake and add it to your icing, you're gonna be SOL. Okay, I'm gonna quickly wash my hands, and then we're gonna move on to what you need to do for the chocolate. Okay, welcome back. Just drying my hands off really well, because water and cake don't mix when you're making cake pops. So I just am using the Wilton brand today. There is another brand at Michael's that is peanut free. So if you're looking for that, again, Michael's has peanut free candy melts. Stuff at the Bulk Barn is not peanut free. Please understand that. Bulk is not the way to go, unless you don't care. I've actually used yellow and green today, hoping for a nice, beautiful spring green. I'm gonna pretend that it's spring, at least try. So what do you need to make a cake pop? You need your cake, that's ready. You need a foam form, any size. Doesn't have to have holes popped into it. It's probably actually better if it doesn't. I always cover it with foil, because that way I know it's sanitized and clean, and then poke my holes. You need sticks, treat sticks. I honestly prefer them a little bit thicker, but these do work pretty good. Again, you can get all this stuff at Michael's. I also use treat bags, because that way they are completely sanitized when you give it to people. And these also come with little twist ties. Again, you can get them at Michael's. If you haven't figured it out, Michael's is my favorite store. They're not paying for me to use their name. It's just where I go, honestly, because I always use a coupon. Bring your kids and have them, you just keep passing your phone down and they'll scan it each time. So you get sometimes 20 to 40, sometimes even 50% off something. Yes. And, oh, for your container, as long as it's microwavable, you're good to go. Here's the trick. Most people just use the chocolate. It will be too thick. It will pull your cake pop off the stick. The trick to getting it to a nice consistency, a thinner consistency, is Crisco vegetable oil, or vegetable shortening. Again, it's vegan, it's gluten-free, it's all plant-based, no animals, according to the package, and it works perfectly. So it's probably about 2 tablespoons for a mug of chocolate. I just scoop that on top, and then we'll go from there. So now I'm gonna melt it. I'm gonna start with 30 seconds, then I'm going to stir it. It's not gonna look like it's even starting to melt, but trust me, it is. Then I'm gonna do it at 20-second intervals in between that to get it nice, thin, and completely melted. So you're going to start with 45 since it's a full mug. And your shortening will start to melt into it as everything else. It goes into a liquid. So I'm going to go ahead and finish melting that, and then I'll be back. Okay, I'm back with my chocolate, and it's there's still some lumps in there, but I think it's because my chocolate's old. And I'm trying not to worry about it because my kids are just going to eat these, and they're just going to think, hey, bonus. And I'm probably going to just throw some sprinkles on it. Just put that on a plate. Oops. Apparently I'm throwing sprinkles on the floor. Okay. So now, step one of getting your cake onto your sticks. Take your stick, dip it in your chocolate, make a hole. Twist it up. You notice the chocolate's more on the outside. I just kind of scoop it and let it go in. Just by tapping it, it'll go in more. And then I put the stick back in. Now, before you dip it into your chocolate, you have to let this set. Doesn't take very long, maybe about 5 minutes. So then just go ahead and we'll just roll some more. You don't want them to be too big because then they will weight. That was the nicer thing with the larger sticks, is that it could hold larger cake pops. But I'm actually having a lot of hard time, well, I haven't been able to find the thicker ones that were actually meant for cake pops. These are more like, they're called lollipop ones, and they're more for your to make candies, like actual lollipops. You want them to stand, you don't want them to set, because you want them to maintain their shape, and once you put them in the chocolate, they will not fully set for at least 5 to 10 minutes. So you do need to, even though it has stopped dripping, you do need to have a form that will hold up your cake pops so that they can completely cool. That's what gives you that crunch when you bite into a cake pop, as well as then you can put it in your bag without it sticking. So it's very important that you have a form. You can go out and buy special stands for cake pops, but it's much cheaper just to buy a form, and you can get that at a bulk store. They sell all different kinds of styrofoam forms. It's from big to small. I just have 2 big ones because, well, I've done cake pops for weddings, so it's kind of in bulk. I'm just gonna do a few today here for the video. My daughter Melody loves making cake pops with me, so I'm gonna wait till she's home to finish it. You can do cake pops gluten and dairy free as well. I always use obviously separate chocolate, separate bowls, separate utensils, everything. The melts are not dairy free, but lots of stores has this brand of, they're like chocolate chips. I get the mini ones because they actually melt nicer and faster than the chunks. You can also buy a white chocolate, and I think it's at Sobeys in their like natural section. Could be Co-op though, I don't remember. It's one of those 2 stores. They're great to find gluten and dairy free products. Better than almost every other store. So that being said, you can do them gluten and dairy free, and I had just thawed this out too because these are gluten and dairy free, and I'll do that with the chocolate and some sprinkles for fun. And yeah, I'm gonna wipe my hands off. My first one is now probably set enough for me to be able to. You can also, if you want them exactly the same size, you can use a little scoop. I use the very small one sometimes if I'm doing it for somebody else and I want all of them to look very uniform. Okay, so before I do that, I'm going to give this another stir, and I know it's going to set up nicely because it's sticking to the spoon. If it doesn't flow off your spoon, however, you're going to want to maybe add a little bit more of the vegetable shortening. Okay, didn't quite get the spring look I wanted. The green is very strong. So then you dip to the stick and then you lift out. And again, I don't know if you can see, but if you have chunks, you're going to end up with a chunky look. And professional-wise, this drives me nuts. And I would never, ever have a product that I sold that had this in it. I would probably go ahead and strain my chocolate. And so then you just kind of give it a little shake to get off the extra chocolate. I'm not doing it hard, because if you do it too hard, then again your cake pop is going to rip off. And I just turn it a little bit. And when it stops dripping, I just give it a few more seconds to even out. And it gives it this beautiful shine to it. And then while they're still wet, you want to add your sprinkles, because if you wait, they won't stick. You're going to get some bounce to it. Just using the ones I spilled because, well, the kids are just eating them. And there you go. There's your cake pop. I'm not going to try this one because it's full of gluten and dairy, and, well, I can't have that. So then I just put it on the opposite side, and it's going to set there for 10 minutes. I'll do one more just to give you a good look. I'm going to see if I can do this closer. So I'm going to dip just to the stick. Oh, my Lanta. Maybe some of those big chunks. Oh yeah, the chunks are falling off. Give it a little shaky shake. You'll notice that the extra chocolate is dripping off. Turn to the side and just start rolling it. And it kind of covers, smooths out. Of course you have these chunks. Oh my Lanta, it's driving me nuts. Clearly, I'm a type A. I don't like things when they don't look nice. And it stopped, and again, it's still wet. Like if I touch it, it's wet. So that's why you need to have a form, because you do need to let that completely set before you give it out and all that kind of stuff. And again, it takes at least 10 minutes. Maybe 5 if your house is on the cooler side. Mine is not. So thank you for joining me today on Through It All with the Moffats. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And I can always give you some help and tips. That's fine too. And yeah, have a great and blessed day. Bye-bye.